I am Roma Malik and I am teaching biology of class 11. Today we will be dealing with the unit Structural Organization in Plants and Animals, and the chapter for today is Anatomy of Flowering Plants. In the previous episode, we discussed regarding the morphology of flowering plants. Morphology means the external structure. Anatomy is the internal structure, and we will be dealing with the internal structure of plants. Different organs in a plant show differences in the internal structures. Even in angiosperms, the dicots and monocot, they have a vast difference. In angiosperms or in any living organism, cell is the unit of life. This cell aggregates and forms tissues. The tissues forms the organ. If we have a look at the anatomy of the organs, we find there is a marked difference between the dicots and the monocots. Cell is the structural unit of life. When these cells aggregate, they form tissue. So, group of cells having a common origin and performing a definite function is called tissues. Tissues in plants are categorized mainly into two types. The first is the meristematic and the permanent tissues. The meristematic tissue gets converted into the permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues are of three types. They are the apical meristem, the intercalary meristem and the lateral meristem. The permanent tissues are of two types, the simple tissues and the complex tissues. The simple tissues are made up of parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, and the complex tissues is made up of the xylem and phloem. Meristematic tissue. The apical meristem is found in the tips of roots and shoots. The intercalary meristem is found between the mature tissues, and the lateral meristem is found in the mature regions of shoot and root. For example, the fascicular cambium, the interfascicular cambium and the cork cambium, which is responsible for the secondary growth in plants. Some meristematic tissues lose the ability to divide and get converted to permanent tissues. Permanent tissues are of two types. The simple tissues, here all the cells are similar in structure and function, and they are made up of only one type of cells. The complex tissues have different types of cells. Under the simple tissues, the first is parenchyma. The parenchymatous cells are isodiametric. They may be spherical, oval, round, polygonal or elongated. Their walls are thin, made up of cellulose. They are closely packed and also have intercellular spaces. Their function is photosynthesis, storage and secretion. The next simple tissue is the collenchyma. It is thickened at the corners due to the deposition of cellulose, pectin and hemicellulose. It is oval, spherical or polygonal in shape. Intercellular spaces are not found. It is because of the thickening at the corners. Their function is mechanical support to the growing parts of the plants like young stem and petiole of a leaf. The next tissue under the simple is the sclerenchymatous tissue or sclerenchyma. They are long, narrow cells. They have thick and lignified walls, and their walls have few or many pits. Pits are the holes which are present in them. They are of two types, the fibers, which are thick walled, elongated, pointed cells, and the sclerids, which may be spherical, oval, cylindrical, thickened with narrow cavities. Their function is to give mechanical support to the organs. They are found in the fruit walls as well as in the seed coats. The complex tissues are made up of xylem and phloem. Xylem is known as the water conducting tissue and phloem is known as the food conducting tissue. Xylem is responsible for conducting water, minerals from root to the stem and leaves. It provides mechanical strength to the plant parts. Their components are tracheids, vessels, xylem fiber and xylem parenchyma. The tracheids are elongated dead cells. They have thick lignified walls with tapering ends and devoid of protoplasm. The vessels are long cylindrical tube-like structures. They have lignified walls and they have a large central cavity which is without protoplasm. They are interconnected through perforations in their common walls. The next component of xylem is the xylem fibers. They have thickened walls and they may be septate or aseptate. Xylem parenchyma. They are the living cells and they are thin walled. The cell wall is made up of cellulose and the stored food is starch, fat as well as tannins. Primary xylem. The first formed xylem is generally referred to as the primary xylem. In stem, the protoxylem lies towards the pith and the metaxylem lies towards the periphery. Such a condition is known as endarch. In roots, the protoxylem is found towards the periphery and the metaxylem towards the pith. Such a condition is known as exarch. Phloem is known as the food conducting tissue. It transports food materials usually from leaves to other parts of the plant. Its constituents are sieve tube elements, companion cells, phloem parenchyma and phloem fiber. Sieve tube elements. They are long tube-like cells arranged longitudinally and associated with companion cells. Their end walls are perforated in a sieve-like manner to form sieve plates. Companion cells. They are parenchymatous cells and closely attached with the sieve tube elements by pit fills. They maintain the pressure gradient in sieve tubes. Phloem parenchyma. They are elongated cells, tapering and cylindrical. The cell wall has pits and the cell wall is made up of cellulose. Function is to store food, resin and latex. Phloem fibers. They are the sclerenchymatic cells. They are absent in primary phloem but present in secondary phloem. They have a thick cell wall. The first formed phloem is called the protophloem and the later formed phloem is called the metaphloem. Primary phloem consists of narrow sieve tubes and is referred to as the protophloem. Phloem which has bigger sieve tubes are called metaphloem. Let us have a quick look at the portion we studied in this chapter. Tissues, the types of tissues, meristematic and permanent. The types of meristematic tissues, apical, intercalary, lateral. The permanent tissues which are of two types, simple and complex. The simple tissues are made up of parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, and the complex tissues, they are made up of the xylem and phloem. We also studied about the protoxylem, the metaxylem, the protophloem, the metaphloem in this chapter. We will be continuing with the tissue system, the classification of the tissue system, the anatomy of dicot root, monocot root, dicot stem, monocot stem and the secondary growth in the next episode.